Hi, this is Caneel Joyce, and welcome to Aloud. Today I have with me the remarkable and beautiful Erin Rocchio. Erin is an executive coach, a partner in evolution, and she's certified in one of my favorite tools that you've heard me talk about many, many times, and it's the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a great tool for personal development. It's made a massive difference in my own life. It's kind of like life was life before the Enneagram and then after the Enneagram. So I'm thrilled to have her here today to talk to us about what this tool is, how we can learn from it, what it's for, what it's not for. And she's also got some great free tools that you can access, and we'll point you to those at aloudpodcast.com. Erin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Caneel. It's so great to be with you. Thanks for having me. What a joy.
It's awesome to see you today on this day. We're recording this on July 14th, and Erin and I both just found out that our kids will be home from school for another semester at least.
Wow.
Erin's in San Diego. I'm in LA. So we bonded about that yesterday, and I'm sure our Enneagram types will show up there just as they do in every other crisis.
I was just going to reference it, but I'll save that for later. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for making the time to be here. Let's dive in. So Erin, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work and where the Enneagram fits in. Sure.
So as an executive and team coach, I spend a lot of my time doing one-on-one leadership development, kind of at a deep personal level, and with a team, with executive and leadership teams who are looking to improve performance. And of course, at organizational culture level, looking at kind of broad systems, structures that support healthy, thriving culture, and ultimately sustained organizational performance. Enneagram seeps into all of it. So I have been using the Enneagram in my work for about, I would say, a decade. It's kind of a guess as to when it exactly started. It seeped in mostly in coaching through one-on-one work. And the reason that I love it as a tool amongst many is the Enneagram is very uniquely suited to support lifelong deep development, and you can take it in a number of directions that you want. You can take it down a spiritual path. You could take it down a path as a parent. How does this help you become a better parent? You can certainly take it into your work and your role as leader. And so for me, I've been exploring it in a lot of different veins with my clients for a long time. And most recently, I use it a ton with teams because I think one of the things that makes this tool so powerful is it gives us access to unlocking relationship at a very deep, profound level. And I say relationship broadly. And I'm happy to kind of really dive into that with you today because it is such a, juicy topic, but it's really important at work because most of the suffering people feel at work comes from other people. And so what I want to help offer for folks is to understand where some of that suffering comes from, some of our own internal mechanisms and needs and preferences and patterns, and then how those interact with others. It's pretty rich. So excited to explore it.
Yes, it's completely true. I mean, I feel like, especially as, I myself am an Enneagram type 4. I know you're a type 3. So we're both heart types and we're relationally oriented to begin with. And so you put me in the world and basically I imagine I'm living in relationship all of the time. And that's kind of the only lens. And I have to remind myself to go into other ways of looking at life. So certainly that's where a lot of my own suffering has been. And I know for my clients as well. So I'm really excited about this. Before we go any further, maybe you can just tell us, when you're first describing the Enneagram to somebody, how do you describe what is it?
Yeah, great. So at a high level view, the Enneagram is a personality typing system. It's been around for thousands of years, believe it or not. The survey, it's pretty incredible.
So this is not like MBTI, Myers-Briggs, any of the other tools that probably any of us have taken before, which are pretty new.
That's right. So let me distinguish something. So there's an Enneagram survey, which is statistically validated, the READY, on the Enneagram Institute website. And there are others now that are new. They're modern. They're, obviously scientifically backed. They are valid predictors of personality. The READY is. Love it, use it, all that's great. But the Enneagram personality system, the theory, the thinking, the diagram on which it's based that shows the 9 personality types and how they interact, that system has been around for thousands of years. And it came to us in America, came out through Brazil, I believe, and it basically emerged its way through into Berkeley in the 70s through some teaching there, and then has really seeped into some important kind of fundamental teacher work with, there's, so Claudia Naranjo was the expert that brought it to Berkeley. And then some offshoots have formed. So you've got the Enneagram Institute, you've got the Enneagram in Business, which is who I trained with, Ginger Lapid-Bogda. She's phenomenal. Runs the Enneagram in Business Network, which is global. There are a lot of Enneagram teachers today, but there's a few schools of thought that have emerged. You'll find different perspectives even amongst those, because all of this came up through the narrative tradition. So it's not like it was written in stone. It's all people's different interpretations. So the big thing I say about Enneagram is I caution people to attach too much to it, like any other tool. It's not the truth. It's not perfect, but it is one of the most powerfully fundamental tools I've seen ever for actually building emotional intelligence. It's a lot of tools like the Myers-Briggs or other systems or just assessments help us become more self-aware, but after we have that awareness, kind of leave us hanging. And so Enneagram provides a roadmap of development that I think is really extraordinary. It says
so not just now I know my type, but now that I know my type, I have something to do with it that is informed by this whole system.
That's exactly right. So all that to say, it's got deep roots, and yet it's proliferating in culture today. You see Instagram accounts pop up with Enneagram.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting, pretty popular. So that's exciting, and also a little terrifying for those of us that do the work with it, but it's all good. It's all good.
When I first was exposed to the Enneagram, I had a girlfriend who was going through a master's program at Northwestern. They're learning leadership, organizations.
My alma mater.
Oh, you went there. Oh, I didn't even realize that. Yeah. So the amazing Jessie Blank was there, and she was asking what my Enneagram type is. And I said, I don't know what that is. She said, how could you not know what that is? You study personality, you're getting your PhD. And then I remember looking at the cover of one of her Enneagram books.
Yeah.
And it had the diagram on it, which if you have not seen it, and we have a photo of it on aloudpodcast.com for this episode, but if you have not seen it, it's a circle with a lot of lines and arrows crisscrossing through it, and something of a 9-pointed star shape. And I'm thinking to myself, this is witchcraft, this is, and not in a respectful way.
Yeah.
And then I started digging into, kind of what the testing process was, because coming out of Berkeley, which is a very strong psychometric, quantitative approach to analyzing and understanding personality, at least it did at that time that I was there, and for a long time beforehand. So they're kind of like the forerunners of that. Yeah. I'm like, this thing is baloney, Yeah. But I was really encouraged to work with it just for myself, for my own coach. And that's where I really began to appreciate the distinction between a tool that is the best we can do when we're trying to create a tool that only describes what we can measure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think that's probably one of the worst criticisms that you could say about a lot of personality tools right now, is that they're limited by what we could put into a measurement tool, which is a really poor reflection of what human personality actually is.
Right.
And I find it to be the most clinically useful tool, even if I can't understand all of the science behind it or psychometrically how to diagnose it in a perfect way, because diagnosis is a bit tricky, which I know we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But I've grown to just completely love it, and I laugh.
Amazing.
I laugh at myself sometimes of just like how much you can think you're right and then change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things for me, and you spoke to it beautifully, Caneel, which is as a heart type person, which I am very much heart centered. I grew up absolutely baffled by people that didn't lead with their heart, that weren't, completely obsessed with relationship the way I was, or interested in being kind and other oriented and like lovey-dovey, warm and fuzzy people. I just like had so much judgment around that. And that is one of the big gifts of the Enneagram, is it helped me see that not only are there 9 different ways of looking at the world, but even if at a simpler level, there are 3 fundamental kind of centers of intelligence that say, this is how we get our wisdom. Ours is through the heart. There's a whole group of people who get their wisdom intellectually. And then there's a whole group of people who get it through their body sensing and their gut. And to me, that was really fascinating. So it helped me step out of judgment and really build deep empathy for people, which I could not be in my job or even in my life, and truly have carry that same level of judgment that I used to have. And now gives me access to a lot more real relationship, ironically enough. So, I think I probably skipped over this, but the Enneagram, including those centers of intelligence, fundamentally answers some questions about what makes us tick, what drives us. And so each of us has a unique need or fear. We have a unique desire. And then we've got thought patterns, fixations that then build into emotional habits. And so we get stuck in these loops. Do you ever notice, Caneel, like you have the same conversation or the same fight in your head or the same complaints over and over again?
Yeah.
And that's what this exposes.
So before it was pointed out to me by someone coaching me with the Enneagram, I didn't even realize that it was the same one. And to me, they all seemed like particular and special and different and unique to only me, right? Which is such a very type 4 kind of a thought. But one of my patterns was certainly, I'll never have what I want.
Oh.
I'll never. Yeah. And that's the 4. And then I realized, it's all the same problem. Yes. That means it's probably not even really true.
Well, it's true from the perspective of your poor little ego who is like trying so hard to survive, but it's not true in terms of like the totality of who you are.
Could you give us some examples of this, the core fear, the core desire, and the thought patterns that lead to the emotions? Maybe pick a couple of types.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with mine. Type 3 is pretty common. I think
type 3 is often called the achiever.
It's often called the achiever. Exactly. Or the performer, or basically we have this energy of having to be productive. And the worldview of the 3 is we're only as good as our last performance. And I used to be an athlete. I often use the analogy of, I could go hit 3 home runs in a row, and the next at bat, it was like I was worthless and did nothing, and I have to start from scratch, which is great from, motivation on one hand, but like really terrible from a lot of other aspects. So for a 3, kind of the core need is to be seen. It's to add value. Adding value through productivity and through achievement is how we feel worthy. So there's a fundamental fear of failure for type 3s and of not being worthy. There's a worthiness component, right? So we're constantly proving how worthy we are. Let me just do one more thing. Let me, make sure I'm recognized in one more way. And so there's this insatiable need to perform, produce, achieve, and have other people see it. Right? Which when I say it out loud, to me as a 3 sounds really gross. I hate that about myself, but really when I can stop and pause and go, oh yeah, that there is some truth in there for me. And then,
I think even that's kind of very 3-ish to judge yourself in that way and say, that's not a worthy way to be. I should really try hard to be a different way.
You got me.
Yeah.
You're such a good coach, Caneel.
So, okay. So for those, I know we have actually a lot of 3s who listen to this show, and it's a very common type in my experience of people who found startups and entrepreneurs. And there are a lot of things that you have going for you, especially in the early days when you're a 3. And I think over time it can become exhausting and you really have to do your self-work for it to be sustainable to run a company, because so much of the world will look like you're failing so much of the time.
That's right.
Even no matter how successful you are.
Right.
So for the threes on the show who are paying attention right now, I can imagine some of them might be thinking to themselves, well, those things are all just true, and doesn't everybody think that way? So give us an example of a type that thinks completely differently.
Sure. So a type that is completely different from threes, which is about action and being your best and achieve, also super oriented around time. I would say the opposite of that is one we're actually connected to. I'm just going to go with a type 9 right now. So a type 9 is the peacemaker, often called the harmonizer. So totally oriented around the affect of the whole team, the whole group, sensing into the needs of everybody else, not their own self and needs. Beautifully calm, sometimes passive, not into action, but really important glue for the spirit of the team and making sure everyone's heard and included, which is the opposite of a 3. The 3's like, me, focus, goal. And the 9 says, wait, what? We have to do something? Let's include everybody first, and then our action will be more productive and more effective at the end. So in some ways they are at the surface level completely distinct. And when you dig underneath, there are some similarities where we can find some real partnership. In fact, some of my closest working colleagues are type 9s, and I've come to just really lean on them and love them because they balance my energy out,
Me too. Heather is a 9. A lot of our listeners have met Heather. Yeah. Heather is my right-hand woman and head of operations, and she completely balances me out. Right. It's amazing how non-dramatic she can be.
Yeah.
So good for me.
So good. So she can anchor you.
Yeah.
Right. We all need different versions of that balance. Yeah. So nines are about harmony, peace. I don't know if how deep you want me to get into all of them today, but you just guide me.
Well, I'm interested in, so let's take a type 9. What would be some of those relational patterns that might show up for some, if I found out I was a type 9, what would I then do with it, especially in relationship? Yeah,
great. So 9s are at the center of the body center. They actually are one of the, I'm going to say this without being too woo-woo. They, from a kind of historical perspective, are the ones that embody presence the most effectively. So they are really powerful types, and yet they act like they're very easygoing. So in relationship, people love being in relationship with 9s because they are affable, they're likable, they're warm and easy. However, 9s also like control. So the body type is all about controlling your destiny. And for 9s, it's not so much that they want overt control, but they do not want to be controlled. So there's a kind of a passive aggressive or unconscious push against any kind of control by other people. And so that will show up in relationship.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're also very good listeners, very attuned to the needs of other people. 9s need to be reminded that their perspective and opinion and needs are included too. Right. So as a partner to a 9, you sometimes have to remind them, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you need? They don't even know. It's so repressed sometimes. So that requires some good digging.
Yeah. And you mentioned, just as an aside, that the 3 and the 9 are related. Yes. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the complexities of Enneagram, as you mentioned, is there are all kinds of lines and arrows connecting the personality types. And this is another aspect that makes it different from other personality systems, is that it really shows us all the ways in which we're connected. And when we're under stress, we demonstrate certain characteristics that can resemble other people, other types. And then when we're feeling really self-aware and secure, we can resemble other types. So that's one of the developmental gifts, I would say. So if you find out your type, one of the places to look is to say, where do I go under stress? Where do I go when I am feeling secure and integrated, or really self-aware and conscious of myself. And so the 3, 9, and 6 form this inner triangle. It's one of the most powerful arrow line combinations in the Enneagram, because it's really the heart of it. And so it describes, a 3 under stress goes to 9, a 3 that's healthy resembles a 6, right? So we stay our fundamental type, but we get to dance with each other. So when we talk about relationship, it can get super rich, because then we can really explore all the different ways that, we can be with each other. So.
Oh yeah. And I think, my husband is a 3, my mom is a 7. So
Nice.
That's one of the areas where we've sometimes gotten into like, we hardly ever have anything that even looks remotely like conflict, partly because she's a 7,
Yeah.
but and the 7s, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, they tend to really favor things that are high energy, high enthusiasm, very positive.
Yes.
They favor joy over any other emotion, but there's a lot of fear underneath that. And so there's this constant kind of like, we need to keep looking on the bright side, because it's really it's dangerous to look. So then as a 4, where I'm always like, wait a second, there's a dark side, and the dark side is awesome, and it's sexy, and I feel completely comfortable down here in the muck. Yeah. And she's like, stop bringing me down. I got to get you up. How can I bring you up? And I'm like, let me stay down. Bring me up.
I'm cool,
so
Mom.
That's been one of our like relationship tensions, which is really, really interesting. And I think I'm sure there's dynamics all over. And I know that you're creating a guide for us, right? To help us with this relationship piece.
That's right. I want to be really intentional about offering you all, and I'm excited to share with you something to kind of explore at different levels how these types work together in relationship. And part of my use and kind of fundamental passion around why the Enneagram is so cool and why we even look at it is that I really want to help people live and lead in a sustainable way. As a 3, I know about kind of the ups and downs and the burnout cycle and all the ways in which we work, at least in the States, is not workable. So I look at the Enneagram and the way we are in relationship according to Enneagram, and in relationship to ourselves, by the way, in this topic of sustainable leadership and resilience. And so lots of resources to come about that, and I'm excited to share with your listeners about them.
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a gift. And we're going to link to all of that for you. Maybe let's see, first steps first. For those who aren't confident in their type, maybe they took a test somewhere that they were told a number, they don't know if it's true or not. Where do we begin to really make sure? Because I know it's important to start with the right type, right?
That's right.
Where do we begin?
So typing is the most important piece of this, and yet it's almost the least important. So for an individual who says, I'm curious about this, I've heard about it, I want to know more, I would get a verified test. So go to the Enneagram Institute. I think it's like $12.
Yeah.
Right? Take the test. Now, this test that they have is one of the very best out there. It's the most widely used around the globe, as far as I'm aware. Statistically validated, and yet it's not perfect, as you mentioned earlier, right? So the most accurate way to type yourself is to do it yourself, and potentially with a coach or someone who knows it and can help guide you. But if you're doing it yourself, I would recommend a couple of books, and I would recommend a couple websites. And there's even a really amazing app. So if you go to the EnneagramInBusiness.com, that website has thousands of resources and tools. And they also have an app called Know Your Type. And it's really fun because you get to play a little game and discover what makes each of these types distinct. And then really the true test is kind of checking in with yourself and saying what resonates most deeply with me about how I know I am kind of at a core level, not who I have learned to be or who I've been trained I should be, or what's acceptable or not acceptable in my family. It's like underneath all of that, what drives me, what motivates me, etc. So there's a lot of self-awareness that needs to and does come through that self-exploration process. And then from there, I do recommend working with a coach. I also recommend, there are now more and more Enneagram books and resources out there than ever before. My favorites are from the Enneagram in Business. And the Enneagram Institute has wonderful books as well. And there's some other really cool podcasts and popular things on Instagram. And Enneagram and Coffee is like a great Instagram account I love. But, I would stick with the teachers that are really true and deeply immersed in this. My other all-time favorite Enneagram book is called The Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut. And it's so rich because it goes into the subtypes.
Her work is awesome. Yeah. We have put together a whole collection of resources for you, podcasts, some videos that I love. And I also have my kind of the instruction manual that I give my own clients when I'm having them walk through this process using the Ready, which isn't, it's not my favorite tool. Well, it is. It is my favorite tool, but it's not.
It's imperfect.
Not my favorite. It's a little bit time consuming, and I do think it's at the end of the day, you're going to get some scores. You're still going to need to do the work to really read about the types where you scored high, and you're going to be really close to tied in a lot of them, usually like 3 at least. And so you'll still need to read a lot. So, but I include kind of my shorthand instructions for you there, and you can get all of that. And we'll link to Erin and Erin. Do you actually do typing for your clients?
I do typing yes, absolutely. And even when I work with teams, I do a ton of typing in a team session or before or after. I think it's pretty critical. So typing, there's a lot of work that goes into typing, but the reason it matters is because each type has their own unique roadmap for development. As I said, so if you're not typed correctly, like I thought, Caneel, I was a 2 for 5 years. And I was like owning my 2-ness. I just love being a 2. I felt so proud to be a 2. It turns out I just wanted to be a 2. So that's a big trigger. If you're reading about various types, you go, "Oh, that one sounds sexy. That one sounds great. I want to be that one." That's probably not your type.
I've heard that. I think it's especially a liability with a 3 because you are so good at, showing up in the way that is
we're chameleons.
The best performer. Yeah.
We're adaptable, right? So, but I remember, I'll never forget, I walked into this training and immediately the teacher called me out. She goes, no, you're not a 2. And I was so mad for like 48 hours. But now I completely agree and completely get it. And so what that did was it gave me a new path to follow in my own work with myself and with teachers and coaches, et cetera. And so knowing your type is just step 1. You want to get it right. And it's just entry into a really rich process.
Ooh, I'm so excited. So pause this right now, go to allowedpodcast.com so you can access resources and we have a sort of a mini cheat sheet for you if you want to get a glimpse at what the different types are and figure out your type, because when we come back, we are going to be delving into what you can do with it. So we'll see you back here in a moment. We're back. Okay.
Hey, Caneel.
Hey, so let's talk about the parenting relationships between type 4s and type 7s, and we'll figure out how to insert this.
Okay. Later on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said something that was so compelling about you being a 4 and your mom being a 7, and in relationship, why those two can get into conflict. And I think this is where the Enneagram can give us such self-awareness and such appreciation for other people. Because at first glance, the 4, who's fundamentally wired to see what's missing and what's deep and dark and loves melancholy, right? Loves all the kind of underbelly of emotions. And then you've got the 7 who lives in possibility and lightness and wants and craves freedom, right? The 7 is oriented to the future, terrified of being present because that feels constraining. For the 4, they love the present. In fact, they want to go deep and rich, like under the surface of the present. Like, let's explore the crevices of this cave.
Everything that's here. Yeah.
Right? And the 7 is like, get me out of this effing cave. This is too confining and terrifying, right? Let's look to the sky. And so that's where I can imagine, like, 7 is constantly saying, oh, it's not that bad. Let me reframe that for you. Let's think about what's positive. And for a 4, that can be really hard to hear because it feels like somebody is fundamentally invalidating what feels super important to you.
And you also feel like you're being torn out of the present constantly, which is like you keep trying to get back there, like being torn out. But I think that a big wake up call for me, well, there's been so many around this one, but is recognizing it's not just that I would like to be allowed to stay here in whatever the melancholy is of the present. It's also recognizing that, no, when I'm kind of being non-productive with my own personality, I actually don't want to admit it, but I actually do want you to come join me down here. Like, I want you to be in it with me.
That's right.
And I get so caught up in my own internal drama and making myself feel invalidated because you don't want to be in this mode, that I then start demanding in passive aggressive ways that you come down here and hang out in the muck with me.
Yeah. And in ways that probably then make them less interested in coming down.
Completely.
Right.
Like,
so we
stay
all
away.
do it. Yeah. We all do these at a certain level, we all do these self-sabotage behaviors, which contradicts the very thing that we're craving.
Yeah.
Right. It goes against. So, if I want to be seen, I'll do these things that will then have me be seen as invisible, or I'll feel invisible. I keep spinning. I think that's one of the things that's so interesting for all of your listeners. It's like, if you can pause for a second and think, where do I find myself spinning? And like, this need that's insatiable, like it's never met. We all have one.
Can we rattle all the way around the Enneagram types so we can just see the variety of that? Like,
okay, so let's start with the type 1. Type 1s have a fundamental need to be good and right. 2s have a fundamental need to be in relationship and of service, connected.
To help.
To be
needed.
Right? To be needed. 3s need to be seen as valuable. I'm fairly confident this whole term value added came from a 3. That's exactly how we think. Where can I add value? How about now? Am I adding value now? Incessant, right? Type 4s have a fundamental need to feel deeply, to feel special and unique, right? I don't want to speak for you. That's true?
That's exactly true. And it didn't help that my name is Caneel, because I was born feeling special, unique, and misunderstood, which pretty much summarizes.
That's it.
3. I need a 4.
You got it.
Yeah. All right. And a 5.
5s have a fundamental need to know things deeply. So while a 4 wants to feel deeply, a 5 wants to know in their head everything there is to know about a particular topic. Sacrificing relationship if they have to. 6s need security. So they look to the future and they go, oh my God, it's scary out there. How do I shore up all this uncertainty? They need safety and security. 7s crave and need possibility. They need freedom, feeling unconstrained. Anybody who speaks about human potential has some 7 in them, right? That's the essence of a 7 is human potential.
And I always think of 7s too as being like life of the party. Like it can always be bigger and more exciting than
most of them. Now, interestingly, I have met some introverted type 7s. So, and this is where some of the nuance with Enneagram comes in. Every 7 can look different. Every 4 can have different variations to it. So they do exist. You don't have to be the life of the party to be a 7, but that is one aspect of the 7. It's the energizer. And it's very alluring. Like they want to lure you in. Come be with me. Come follow my possibility.
Yeah.
Great leaders, visionaries, Type 8s, also very common. They have a fundamental need for control. They want to have power. Ultimately, they don't want to be vulnerable. Right? They want to be strong. And then type 9s need harmony. They need inclusivity and kind of oneness. That's the 9. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. So that gives a little bit of a flavor. Now let's say that we've figured out what our types are and it's time for us to do something with it. How can I use my type to grow?
Yeah. So I think this is the fun part where we get to coach ourselves or really dig in and say, now what? And I think the first thing to do is start to notice patterns. When I'm under stress, where do I notice my thoughts, my emotions, and my behavior? How does that express itself? What about that is productive? What about this is unproductive? Like, where is this no longer supporting what I say I want Where might I be getting in my own way? So start to pay attention to some of these loops we find ourselves in. Start to name them. I'm a big proponent of journaling, or my latest favorite journal is a Post-it. Like even one word. Here's what's coming up for me right now. Paying attention to and start to become a student of your own patterns is really important. The other thing in relationship is to start to notice what aspects of other people frustrate you or trigger you or have you feel disconnected or irritated, right? Because often there's some really good nugget of learning there for you, right? So like I'll say for me, I love to be focused and I love clarity. I get really irritated when people get in my way of achieving focus and goals, or they take a long time because I'm wired for productivity. So in those moments I go, oh, there's my 3 mechanism, if you will. There it goes again, right? And I can have some self-compassion for my own automatic patterns instead of saying, oh, darn, Erin, like what's wrong with you?
That is more productive. So I'm allowed to be my type. I'm allowed to keep having the same pattern. And when I can not just see it and recognize it, but also love it really like not just allow it, but appreciate it, then I can imagine I waste a lot less energy. And I can show up in a more whole way, just being who I'm being. That's right. And maybe I want to make some adjustments, but
that's right.
Loosens its grip a little bit, huh?
Yes. So the Enneagram is one way of helping us understand all the things that are happening in the background that we're unconscious to. It's like our hardwiring. So if we're not aware of them, they're going to be there anyway. So this is a way of making friends with it and saying, when I'm not conscious, here's the fundamental need, the thoughts, the feelings that are going to be there no matter what. We're not going to change the goal is not to change you. The goal is actually to shine a light on some of that deeper, darker stuff and come to love it, right? And appreciate. It's really designed to keep you safe. It's designed to keep you, I won't say happy. It's designed to help you survive. And it will help you survive. But also the more we can love it, that's where we bring wholeness into our life, where we can say, instead of rejecting this part of myself, most of us spend most of our life rejecting fundamental aspects of who we are.
True.
How much pain does that cause? Right? We don't need to do that. What if we were to embrace that and say, you know what? I don't love that, as a 3, I care about what other people think of me. I wish I didn't, but guess what? I do. Darn it. I might as well come to just let it go and appreciate that and see what can I do with that could be of service to myself, to other people.
Because when we reject, repress, or deny parts of ourselves, we push parts of ourselves into our shadow.
That's right.
And this was episode number 2 with Luke Entrup of this show. I think it's just so fundamentally important that it was episode number 2. Yes. And when we push our own hardwiring into our shadow, meaning we're not trying to govern it anymore, we don't even see it, we're not willing to admit it, right. Then it's operating non-consciously, and that's when it becomes it can come out at times where we least expect it, where it's least intentional, least perhaps of service. That's right. And suddenly you're like, why am I reacting this way? This is not helping the situation at all. Well, probably there's some shadow here. And I think the other thing that happens with shadow is we begin to see it in other people and get upset with them about it. When really it's us.
Yeah. Projection.
Projection. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I completely agree with you. It's fundamental. The only way that we're going to be, I think, really thriving as human beings is to embrace these sides of ourselves. And, we talk about relationship. We cannot possibly truly see and understand, let alone love other people, if we don't understand all the ways that they came to have that perspective. Right? So I can only appreciate you, Caneel, when I fully understand what makes you you and why that's so meaningful. And by the way, here's the other kind of big thing for the Enneagram that I just think about almost every day. There are at least nine different perspectives on life that are all equally valid. Okay? That's earth shattering for me as a 3 who thinks I know all the best ways of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got lots of evidence about that. No, there are 9 equally valid and important ways of perceiving life. And when I can stand from that place, so holy cow.
This is why it's such a great tool for working with executive teams. You know, it's so easy to come into your team, to show up at work thinking my way is the right way, and my job is to either deal with other people who are doing it wrong and thinking it wrong, or convince them of the opposite.
Yeah.
And you know, some kind of typical conflicts I've seen come up is like between 1s and 8s.
Yes.
And the 1s want to get all the structure in place and do it right and make sure, and like due diligence and the process and systems. And they're so fantastic at that. And I've met a lot of COOs who are 1s. And I'm not sure if it's common, but seems to be a good fit. And then there'll be an 8 CEO who's saying, I don't care about I don't care about your system. I don't care about your process. I don't care what I have to break. We're going in this direction. You're with me or you're against me. Get out of the way. Like break. Amen. I don't care. This is a waste of time. You know, there's only one goal, right? And so I've seen that conflict more times. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that. So there's a lot of value in knowing not only your own type, but the types of others you work with, not just because you want to stereotype them, but because then you can have some understanding of, oh, this is what they're after. And I only have a slice of the reality here.
Okay, let me give you a great example on that. So for me, I worked for many years with a type 6, which is when you think about a team and decision making, for me, I'm like, let's make decisions quickly, let's move fast, let's, boom, 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 boom. Don't sit around too long. Type 6s are the opposite from that regard. And so they want to make sure all the details are thought of, all the considerations are had, all the questions are asked. And I spent years getting so annoyed and frustrated by this one colleague who would constantly ask questions in meetings that, to my undeveloped 3 self, felt like they made me look bad. So it was a source of conflict. And when I did some deeper dive on it, I realized like, okay, if I were to stop and put that aside for a second and say, how could I meet her need, which is really for security and knowing? How could I help her answer her questions earlier? By the way, it makes my decisions better. Now I've got, instead of someone who feels like an enemy at work, she feels now like a really important partner. My decisions are better. Yeah, it might take me, a day or 2 longer. But my plans, which 3s are obsessed with planning, they're way more thoughtful. And we don't have to go back, right? And so it satisfies my needs and her needs. And now I've got a partner at work instead of someone I'm constantly railing against.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
For me, that's kind of what there is to do after you know your type. Start to notice where all these conflict patterns come up and say, let me dig underneath the surface and say, what is that other person? I loved your language. What is that person really after? You know, they want to make sure everything's okay. Well, guess what? I can do that for her. I can do that for her. So let me meet that need. Let me not get distracted by this behavior. Yeah.
This is reminding me again of my relationship with my mom. And you all have heard me talk about my mom a lot on this show. And in COVID, in the COVID era, she's been, I've appreciated her positivity and her 7-ness so much. And she is like walking on sunshine all the time and like she's just so thrilled with life. And it's not only in this era, but also in this era and especially, and, my daughter has a lot of 7 in her. She's got a lot of Cindy Joyce in her. And that because she'll always say, but the good thing is on the bright side, and she's always pointing out like everything that's great, So I'm really, I'm like, that actually is a really great skill to have right now. And and we have a choice about how we want to see the world. But when I'm stuck in my own type, I don't think there is a choice, and I don't think there's another way to see it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So I completely,
Yeah.
I love the way that you're applying this so much to relationships. So helpful. So all of you who are listening or watching this on YouTube, please go to aloudpodcast.com to get what Erin's offering you, this guide to using the Enneagram in relationships at work, in family, romantic relationships. It is extremely helpful. I think you'll be able to use it right away today, and go figure out what your type is. I think in this era right now, with all these challenges, it's going to be one of the most useful tools in figuring out how do you erode your own resilience and wholeness, and what might the path look like in you working with how you are and who you are to become more resilient and whole.
Yeah. Beautifully said, Caneel. I think the times we're living in are so uncertain, so anxiety producing. There's so much change coming at us day to day. I think this is one of the very best ways, the very best tools we have to say, in this moment, given there's so much I can't control, what do I need to feel centered, to feel grounded, and to feel whole in this moment? Right? We cannot survive life day to day, given what's going on, if we don't have that anchor. And so the Enneagram can be so powerful, right? To give us that self-awareness and that path in conjunction with other things, right? But it takes us really committing to that path.
And it is, we so often repress and deny what we even need, or we don't know how to even know what we need. So it is so nice having a little shortcut, a little path. Like perhaps as a 9, you need some more harmony. Great. How can I give that to myself? Wonderful. So I want to draw some connections to, we talked about how this relates to shadow. I have one more connection I want to make sure I draw before we wrap up today. And a lot of this show has been spent talking about conscious leadership, the drama triangle, the empowerment triangle, and related to that, of course, when we are in empowerment, when we're above the line, we are committed to living in our zone of genius primarily. Yes. So I see the Enneagram as really, really relating to all of these things. And when and tell me if this is how you think of it. I think of it, when I go below the line, I am basically hooked by my personality type. I have lost perspective that there's any other way to see it than the way that I see it, which is the way that's dictated by this kind of egoic self-protection mechanism, which for me is, there must be something missing here. And it's really important that I'm unique and special in order to, I'm not sure what, I'm not even sure what I'm going for there, actually. Yeah. To be okay, to be valid.
Yeah. I totally see it that way. So at a very base level, like for me, having distinctions inside either this or that, even though the truth is there's more than that, it does help me get clarity in certain moments. So I look at the Enneagram as giving us access to the ego versus our essence, or kind of our fundamental nature, which is very whole and super complex and all this. But when we're not conscious of this is running. This is necessary to help us survive. Our ego is needed. It's our brain in fight or flight. And when our brain goes there, we're below the line, and we say, how do I survive this moment? And the I that's talking is our ego. Right?
The one that's perceiving there's this big threat.
There's a big threat. I've got to guard against the situation, you, myself, what's happening. I've got to survive it. And so unless we're aware of what's happening in that moment, it's going to be typically undesirable behaviors that come out. Right. Like things that we look back on and go, oh, why did I say that?
And when I am empowered in myself, meaning I'm embracing who I am, how I am, what my actual needs are. And I'm recognizing that I can work with who I am to create what I want. Then I'm out of drama. I'm above the line, and I have access to my own zone of genius, not somebody else's zone of genius, not trying to show up and look like a 1, or a 7, my own zone of genius, which looks for me, very, very fourish.
Yeah.
And like being able to like embrace that. So that's how I think this is all very connected, which is another reason why it's so helpful to know your type, because it helps you recognize even faster where
That's
you
right.
are, above or below.
Yes. And I would say all of that, the big thing that comes up for me when I hear you talk about this is it requires self-compassion. What gives
Mm-hmm.
us access to self-compassion? If we're below the line in survival, feeling triggered, angry, fearful, you name it, right? We're trying to protect ourselves. Having the ability in that moment to meet ourselves with compassion and say, gosh, Caneel, I can see, like you're speaking to yourself, like all you really want is to be seen and held as you are.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could do that for yourself?
Yeah. I'm the
That's how
only one who
you,
can do that,
turns
actually.
out.
I have to do it for myself because it won't, yes. And that's how it is for all of us.
That is.
Yeah.
But we've got to meet ourselves in those moments when we are below the line with a huge degree of self-compassion. And we can have compassion when we understand. The
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram helps us understand where it's coming from so we can
Mm-hmm.
embrace it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it feels fake. It's like, oh, just say an affirmation and you'll be better. That's not,
Right.
not actually how it works. We've
It's
got to
more
really
like a
deeply
scared,
understand it.
like hurt little child that comes to you and you're saying, oh, oh, poor baby, of course. Like you make sense to me. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I see
this
you.
is
I get
scary. You
you.
need something.
Right. And from that, then, yes, you can be genuinely empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then be in your genius.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's a critical tool to doing what you're describing, that path of self-acceptance and compassion and exploration and expression. It's incredible.
It feels good. It feels good.
Yeah.
Well, Erin,
Good.
so speaking of you being a achievement oriented person who's achieved
Yeah.
a lot, I know that we dove really deep into Enneagram today, and there's so much more there that you're
Yeah.
offering some of it to us, and you do more with your teams. But also, this is only one of your areas of expertise. Tell us
Mm.
about some stuff that you've got going on. If our listeners want to get more plugged in with you, do some work with you, what are their options?
Yes. Yeah. So another really big passion area for me, I mentioned it earlier, is this idea of being kind of whole and resilient in all areas of your life, particularly at work, in contrast to burnout. And so I'm
Hmm.
building a really exciting coaching program, an incredible self-guided coaching workbook for people who feel any glimpse of burnout. It's rooted in some really rich integral theory. It's going to be beautifully designed to satisfy my 4 friends. And it includes the Enneagram. And so there will be a way to go through it on your own. Some people find coaching a little intimidating and they say, I'm not ready for that yet. So you can do it all by yourself if you want. There'll be some videos from me. And then if you are more invested, you'll have the opportunity to do something like the Enneagram or take some other burnout inventory assessments with me and do some coaching. So I'm really excited to be able to offer that to folks in the next couple of months.
Oh, exciting. Well,
Yeah,
let
and you
us
can go to
know
my
when that's ready and
website.
we'll send people. Yeah, website.
I
What is it?
sure will. It's erinrocchio.com, ErinRocchio.com.
And we will link to all of that in the show notes. And we'll also, if you are on our email list, we'll let you know when Erin's course is ready and live for you. And you can maybe even get yourself on a waiting list beforehand.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll set that up and give you the details there at aloudpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time, for being
Caneel.
here
So fun to be
today.
with you.
So fun.
Can't
And
wait to see you
listeners,
again.
thank you for showing up for yourselves and for investing time in getting to know what are more ways that you could get to know yourself and allow yourself to be exactly as you are. And we'll see you next time.